Hello, I'm Mark Pamplin, and I'm here with Danny Day. He is the subject of a documentary called The Informant and a book called White Hot Hate. It was based on an incident that happened here in Garden City, Kansas, about the bombing of the Somalian apartment complex. He has had a couple of documentaries done about this and has given some interviews and had a book written about the incident, but he has yet to do a long form interview about this. So we welcome here Danny. Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And just as a note, Danny and I have known each other probably since the early 80s.
Yeah.
We were neighbors of Coachman Lane, Labrador area. Played some baseball on the old Coachman field there, and our families grew up together and things like that. So this is very interesting to me. Let's start out about your upbringing here in Garden City. Were you born here in Garden?
Yeah, I was born and raised here. Went to high school. All my friends are here.
Mhm.
I never really wanted to leave. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you stay in Garden City during that?
No, I went to the community college out here for a couple of years
Mhm.
and worked at EPS and some different jobs and decided I was ready to go see the world. So I went to Oklahoma.
Okay.
Just not very far, but that's where I went to college and got my degree in Bartlesville, Oklahoma.
Okay. And you got married relatively young age, I think.
Yeah, about 24, 23, 24.
Still going strong.
Yeah, I just can't remember how long.
Right.
How long?
It happens. You know what? We'll edit that part out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, actually, I don't. Yeah, but yeah, ended up moving back, got a job.
what kind of work were you doing?
Um, I worked at the juvenile detention center. I did that for quite a while. Um, then I worked with
Were you a guard? What did that
is
entail?
a shift supervisor. They don't really have guards. They're like detention officers, and I mean this was back in the like late '90s, early 2000s.
Mhm.
Garden City was having like a pretty big gang problem then.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of from people from LA, Chicago, bringing the gangs in to work at the beef plants,
Mhm.
and then their own homegrown gangs, and so yeah, I mean there's a lot of drive-bys and murders, and it was full of the detention center anyway, full
Right.
of juvenile gang members mainly, and, and then of course they'd grow up and
Right.
go on to do bigger and better things. But after I really enjoyed working with the juveniles, and I could relate to them, and they need discipline. You had to give them discipline, but you just try not to treat them like caged dogs.
Right.
Treat them like humans. And after that, I did that for like 10, 12 years.
Oh, no kidding.
Then I moved. I moved again to another part of Oklahoma, and started on my master's, and moved around a little bit and ended up coming back and
What
working.
were you getting your master's in?
It was an MBA.
Okay.
I just wanted to do something different. I wasn't planning. I never planned on getting in criminal justice or anything,
Mhm.
but I was offered a job at the as a probation officer, intensive supervision officer, take care of high-level felony clients on probation.
Right.
So I did that for several years, and
Was that here in Garden?
yeah,
as
that
well?
was Spring Garden. And then that kind of went from there, kind of led to working with helping the FBI out a little bit.
Okay. Oh, how big a family did you come from? How
I
many
got
brothers and sisters?
it's a split family. I mean, was 14 of us all together, but
14?
yeah, but that's a
Okay.
5 step, 2 adopted. So yeah, I'm the youngest of everybody.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it wasn't everybody ended up.
Okay, that's why I'm surprised. Because I mean, growing up,
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
I knew you, and I think I knew your older brother,
It was
and I think
yeah,
your older brother and my older brother.
and
Okay,
yeah. So yeah, there were lots of fights, and
Yeah.
I mean that was just part of
Oh, yeah,
that was part of it, fighting over the TV,
Right.
but it kind of prepared me for life a little bit. But
Right.
I
Right.
didn't, I didn't have to worry about too many people picking on me. So.
Right. And I don't know. Did I ask you? You were born here, right?
Yeah, I was born here.
Okay. You went to school all through high school and
Went
things like that.
went, yeah, grade school, A. Beaver, high school, community college.
Right. All right. All right. So we were talking about the beginnings of this whole thing. I had seen in the documentary that you and your son were out going to. What was your son doing?
He was actually it was in the early summer. We'd go out every morning and he would run and I'd walk.
Right.
I was a little bit starting to get a little bit overweight then. So I was just trying to walk and he would kind of lap me at the walking park.
Was he doing cross country or?
No, he was actually getting ready for wrestling.
Oh, okay.
Just trying to get in shape and it's only a couple blocks from the library and we'd walk over there and cool off, get a drink of water and read newspaper, whatever.
Oh, okay. Because
So-
I wondered what that meant in the documentary. It was like cool off. But,
Yeah, I mean it's hot. Yeah,
but it was just
sometime-
you were just there for the air conditioning.
Yeah. I mean, we could have went home. We
Yeah.
were just there to cool off, read, maybe get on the internet.
Right.
Just one day they used to have the bulletin board right when you would walk in,
Right.
and I walked by there, and it was a kind of like it was an anti-Israel poster, and it had it said for Palestine. It gave you numbers actually to call to help the
Right.
Palestinians.
Did it have like tearaway
Yeah,
numbers type
yeah.
of thing? Okay.
And I'm like, I've never seen anything like that political in Garden City,
Right.
in the Midwest, anything. With
And
that.
especially anti-Israel.
Yeah, and I was like, and I'm pro-Israel,
Right.
I pro-Israel, and I was like, man, I don't have no business being up there, so I took it upon myself to take it down.
Right.
And people were like, well, you had no business doing that. I was like, well,
Did they say that at the time, like when you were
well,
there, or
I-
just
I was
eventually?
criticized, yeah,
Eventually,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. I never took no heat for it.
Right.
But and actually, what happened was we were walking out. I was just gonna throw it away, and we were walking out, and I ran into a former coworker of mine, and I'd seen his Facebook, and I'd seen him print like 3%ers, which is a militia.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah.
I didn't know what 3%ers meant.
Yeah, that's a nationwide militia.
Okay. And this was on his Facebook. page.
Yeah, I would see things that he would get, and he was always into political stuff
Right,
like that, and
right.
like he might be interested. Anyway, I showed it to him, and he was like,
You just happened to run into.
"Yeah," and I hadn't seen him for actually a couple of years, and he's like, "Wow, can I take a copy of this?" I'm like, "You can just have it. I don't want it. I mean, I thought about calling the number, which I never did, but anyway, he was like, "Hey, you want you and your son?" This was, I think, on a Friday.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, "We're having a barbecue over at my house." And I said, "You and your son, bring you." My son was with me.
Right.
He's like, "Bring your son. Come on over. Have a free barbecue." And we're like, "Yeah, free barbecue, sure, yeah, we'll
Sure.
come over." What we didn't realize when we got there, there's people walking around with fatigues and carrying guns. You know, I carry guns too, but these guys are open
Right.
carry, and I always, you know, conceal carry, you know, conceal, and they were like real. Um,
Was this out in the country?
no,
Was
it was
this
actually in town in the backyard.
just in a backyard?
Yeah, backyard. They had a fence around it. I mean,
Mhm.
they weren't hiding it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, being in militia is itself is not illegal. I mean, the Constitution
Mhm.
calls for it, allows for it, you know.
Yeah.
So, but they were, I was like, it kind of caught me off guard, you know, just, I thought it was just a regular, you know, backyard barbecue. And,
Sure.
Um, and these people that take their guns and they're like, you know, I grew up around guns ever since I was, you know, my dad when I was 4 years
Yeah.
old, you know.
Yeah.
Gun safety, you know. These guys are, you know, you don't point a gun unless
Right.
you're ready to kill something. You every gun's loaded. I don't care if it's,
Right.
you know, you check it 10 times. You don't, every gun's loaded.
Right. Right.
And these guys are like pointing guns like right by my son and me, and I was like, hey man, just
Yeah.
don't point the gun.
Right.
You know, I didn't. He kind of gave me a dirty look. Nobody knew who I was, so I was like, and they're all, you know, they're all armed, I afraid to, you know, somebody doing like that, you know, putting a gun towards your son, and
Right.
so anyway, I was like, I wasn't real impressed with their. Anyway, they start talking about governments and all the Somalis.
Now, was this like an organized thing where they were going to say, "Now we're going to talk about this"?
Yeah,
Or was it-
actually, everybody had something to eat, and then they all gathered around.
Right. Now, was there anybody else like you there who
There was a couple other people.
were just invited along?
Yeah, they were, you know, they were in camouflage too.
Uh-huh.
I didn't find that out until later, but yeah, they were, and they eventually
Right.
actually joined. But yeah, the leader of the militia actually lived in Dodge City, and these were people from, you know, some of our most, you know, small towns around here,
Right.
Lincoln, Dodge. Um, but then everybody gathered around and the leader brought out this flyer and started talking about ISIS. There was all these Somalians, you know, they'd been talking about before that the Somalians were hooked up with ISIS, you know, back in 2016, 15, 16.
Right.
ISIS was a big thing going on in the world. And,
Sure.
And then, you know, there were people saying there's soft cells here in, you know, in America, you know, they'd rise up and kill 10 people.
Right. And just to make sure that everybody understands as far as what we're talking about here as far as what Garden City is. Garden City is kind of a catch-all for immigrants.
Right. Yeah.
Especially, we had the Vietnamese in the late 70s, and once we opened IBP, which is now Tyson,
Right.
the largest packing plant, or beef packing plant in the world at the time,
Right.
we got an influx of Vietnamese that came
Right.
in, and that was some growing pains because we went from a town of like 17,000
Oh, yeah.
to a town of 30,000
Yeah, like
literally
that.
in 3 years.
Right.
Where at night we had literally one police car driving around,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you know, we were Mayberry.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so once they started to kind of fade out as far as people growing up, making some money, moving on.
Right.
Not only that, we got a lot of cool stores out of it. We got a lot of restaurants.
Oh,
out of
yeah.
it. You know, we got a lot of
Yeah,
textures that we probably wouldn't have. And the same thing with the Somalians. When everything went down in Somalia, they came here
Right.
for jobs.
and a lot of other countries close
And a lot
by,
of- yeah.
by there. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about when
Right,
we're bringing in the
you know.
Somalians, and we brought in thousands.
Right, to work at the beef plants.
To work at the beef
I mean, it's
plants,
hard work. I worked out there. I graduated a semester early in high school and went out there for 4 months, and I was like,
I drove out there one time, and I walked towards the office, and I was like, I don't know how these people
Actually,
do it.
I worked at Montford. I was only 17.
Oh, really?
They carded me at Tyson at IBP. And
Right.
Longford, they didn't care.
Right. So putting that in perspective, this is,
Right.
we have a lot of, we had some growing pains with the Vietnamese that came in,
Right.
and now and I'll say it, we're having some growing pains with the Somalians.
Yeah.
So, but it's all coming.
Oh yeah. I mean, overall, I think you adjust and
Yeah.
and people.
And this situation is not indicative to who Garden City is.
Oh, right.
When we're talking
Right,
about this.
absolutely.
So I'm sorry I interrupt you. I just wanted to put that in perspective.
Sure. Yeah. And
So
That
they were
was-
bringing out.
that was the main. They were living basically all off of Mary Street, and I think that's Mary Street apartments, and
Mhm.
I think that's what made them stand out so much.
Right.
And walk across the street and walk to Dollar General, and
Right.
they had a mosque, right there, which I never even knew.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know there's two mosques,
Yeah.
one on both sides.
Mhm.
But anyway, these militia guys, they just knew that these Somalians with this militia
Right.
were connected to something to do with ISIS. Either they were raising money for them, or they were hiding them, or there was they said there were ISIS training camps here.
No proof. No.
Oh no,
nothing.
nothing. They were actually doing surveillance on them at night. We'd go up.
Okay, I was going to get to that.
Yeah.
But they were already doing that by
Yeah.
the time you had
Yeah,
got it. Okay.
right. So anyway, he's talking about it's like ISIS and Garden City. I'd never heard that. I was like,
Yeah.
I had a pretty good year. What was going on in town, and I was like, really? And then I was concerned. This is my hometown. And then the leader brings up the flyer. It's my flyer. And
The actual flyer that
Yeah.
you tore down.
right, it was at
And-
my coworker's house. I mean, it was
Okay, so it's not the guy that you gave it
No,
to.
no.
This is somebody else.
right. He gave it to the leader of the militia,
Okay.
who happened to be from Dodge City, but he came over.
Yeah.
And that was called. They call themselves the 3%ers of Southwest Kansas. That was the name of their militia. And
What's the reason for the 3%, or what's the
okay, the
definition?
3%ers. It's not actually a true statement, but they're saying during the Revolutionary War, it only took 3% of the people, militia people, to stand up and fight against the British.
Okay.
And that's been proven wrong, but it took more than that.
But yeah, don't let
But-
facts get in the way.
But yeah,
Of a
that's
good story.
it caught on, and everybody's 3%ers. They didn't even know what it means.
Right.
I'd see stickers on people's trucks, and they didn't know what I mean.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
sounded cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, that's my flyer there. What the heck? And then, long stories, to get to the story,
Mhm.
they had kind of put their own touch to the story and manufactured. I mean, I don't know if they were. I think somebody must have said, yeah, and there's an ISIS recruiting poster there too. That's what it was. And there was none.
Yeah.
And then it was guarded by Somalians, standing there, guarding.
So they're making up this whole
Right.
thing.
And, there were a lot of Somalians would go to the library and read it.
for
but
the internet and for the
right. Yeah. Mainly for that. They'd go there and same reason everybody else did,
Right.
And, and then I figured that out, and I was like, so anyway, me and my son, we got up, and they asked me if I was interested, and they asked me what I thought about the government and Obama, and I was like, well, I'm a patriot. I don't like Obama. I don't like what the government
Right.
does, but that's not true.
Right.
Um,
But not enough to go join.
I don't. Yeah, I just don't hate everything.
Right.
I'm proud to be an American.
Right.
Anyway, we got up and we left.
Well, let me ask you, what was your son thinking during this whole
My
thing?
son is very versed in history and
Mhm.
stuff they were saying. He was Other people had brought their kids too.
Right.
It was like a family. Well, sons anyway, or
Yeah.
the men there. Because they were wanting to recruit the younger.
Sure.
My son was like pushing 15 at the time, I think. He was like, he's very intelligent. And he was like kind of shaking his head too. And we got up and anyway,
Okay, so
I'd had enough and I got up and, you know.
what were they saying to you on the way out?
They were like, hey, you know, you interested? We'd love to have you join us. And I was like, yeah, I'll think about it. And yeah, we'll see you later, man. And
Get
me
the
and my
hell out
son
of there.
we get in the, you know, we get in my truck and me and my son's like, sure thing, you know, my son, that wasn't even a real barbecue, it was just hamburgers. We want barbecue, you know,
Right.
ribs and briskets, and you know that was our idea. So.
Right. Yeah. If
So-
you're gonna recruit, come on.
That's what I wanted.
You're
I wanted a
surrounded
real
by
barbecue.
beef. Come
Kind of a
on.
bologna sandwich and a hot dog, but yeah, we were like, man, this is crazy, you know, the way they handled their weapons. And
Right. How many people were there? Do you think?
there's probably 20
Okay.
20 people approximately.
Yeah.
But anyway, we went home and that was on Saturday. That night and Sunday, that flyer, one of the militia members took it and put it on Facebook. It went viral.
Really?
I seen it and I'm like,
Right.
oh crap. and then they were talking about ISIS. And I'm like, oh crap. But as soon as you would try to go to that site that had one, it would be taken down immediately. Facebook would take it down
Right.
when they start talking about ISIS. And I'm like, I didn't know I was
And
going.
is this like the next day? Is
Yeah,
this just
yeah.
this is literally the next
Yeah,
day.
and Saturday and Sunday. I was like, holy cow! I was like, what's going on here? And you know, talking about the ISIS and and then that come Monday, there's all kinds of rumors. People were saying, I mean, people were saying, you know, they knew it came from the library, but they were like, oh, it didn't come from the library. Look at the picture was taken on a table,
Right.
and they showed a picture of the board, and like it's a different material, so it couldn't have been taken from the library.
Right.
And I'm like, you know, of course I didn't say nothing.
You know exactly what it is.
I didn't get on there. Hey, I took that down, you know.
Yeah.
But the next Monday morning, I get a call from a coworker who's I gave the flyer to and went to his house, and he's just like, "Hey Dan, can you come over here real quick?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was you'd never, you know, we hadn't talked for a while.
Right.
I mean, a few years ago we'd go out shooting and stuff. So,
Sure.
but I was like, I kind of wanted to talk to him anyway, but I find out, you know, about the the whole thing. But he didn't tell me why, and my son was like, "Can I go?" And I was like, "Yeah, you can go with me."
Let me a little back.
But you're gonna sit in the truck, and if I'm not out in like 20 minutes, you call the police.
Right.
Because I got there and there's some different vehicles there, and I didn't know what was going on. And I walk in the, he knock on the door and walk in, and two FBI agents there. They introduce themselves and show me their credentials, and I'm like, yeah, nice to meet you.
So this is at your friend's house
Yeah.
that you
next-
originally
right.
gave this to
Right,
that had the barbecue.
right. So I get in there and I'm like, I still don't know what's going on.
Right.
And they, my former coworker was kind of nervous, and he was like, you know,
So he didn't know what's going on.
well, yeah, he knew what was going on. They weren't telling him the truth. They couldn't. They were like, well, they basically threw me under the bus. They didn't give me no warning. The FBI was over there. Oh yeah, I know where,
so
I know where it came
your
from.
friends were like, yeah, he's the one that took
Yeah,
this
yeah,
down. He's
but-
the one that's
well,
responsible.
yeah. And they were like, I don't know if they actually told them that, but like maybe you need to talk to him.
Right.
To me, talk to Dan Day, you know. And so they asked me what happened, and
Okay. So the FBI
the
gets
FBI
this.
said we're
Gets,
sitting there. at
they
his
get this
house.
off of Facebook.
Right. When it concerned ISIS, you know, that's a national security.
Right.
And that had them going all weekend trying to
So
trace,
okay.
and they were finally able to trace it down to back to
The barbecue. Basically.
right, correct.
Okay. Okay.
And then
And that's how they brought you. Okay.
right, and they, you know, they brought me in, and I'm still kind of puzzled, and they were waiting for something, and I was like, one of them was on the phone, so they were waiting, talking to me, and it's like, yeah, I went to school with the FBI guy's an FBI agent now.
The one that was in the room.
No, the guy that I graduated with.
Oh, okay.
Kurt.
Stoner.
Yeah, he was an FBI agent now, and,
Yeah.
and she's like, "Oh, I know him." You know,
Yeah.
Amy. But anyways, I was just making small talk, and so when they were ready to talk, he got off the phone, and they were like, "So, do you know anything about this fire and anything?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I told them the truth, you know,
Mhm,
told
yeah.
them what happened, and
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, okay, that's all we need to know." And so, well, we talked a little more, but basically they just wanted to find the source, and they were like, "So was there an ISIS?" Like, no, I mean, not that I seen.
There was no
you know.
recruiting table or
Right,
anything.
but I was still kind of in shock and looking around. I still,
How many people were there? There was the two FBI agents,
yeah,
your friend,
and his family, and there was one other militia guy.
and one of the militia guys.
Yeah, and anyway, so we talked for a few minutes, like 10, 15 minutes. My son was ready to, you know, if he didn't come out, but I came out, and I was like shaking my head, and I was like, I just met two FBI agents in there. He's like, what for? And I explained it to him. And well, the next day, Amy, one of the FBI agents, she called me up and like, hey, you think you could come down and talk to us for a little more? You're not in no trouble and nothing. And yeah, I mean, yeah, no problem. I have nothing to hide. I didn't do anything, so I didn't even know there's an FBI office in Garden City.
Yeah, I know.
I had no idea.
And they have to cover a lot of territory.
Yeah,
I mean, and there's two of them, and it's like for all of western
right.
Kansas.
Yeah,
So everything west of Hutch, basically.
yeah.
So
But yeah, so I went down there and I talked to them, and we made a lot of small talk, and they were asking me about myself and everything, and then they were asking, you see, they were like, man, your friend kind of threw you under the bus, caught you off guard, didn't he? I was like, yeah, he did, and I was pissed. I was pissed at him. And in fact, I went back that night and was like, what the heck are you doing after the FBI left?
yeah.
When he
what did he say to that?
He was like, well, I was just helping the FBI out, you know.
Right.
He was just, I mean, he could tell them the truth, but he didn't. But anyway, the FBI.
Well, what did he tell them then? I mean,
I don't know exactly what he told them.
mhm.
I don't
Okay.
know. I don't
But
know.
it wasn't you
It
took this
wasn't
down
because
and you showed it to him and he
Right.
took it. It wasn't
'Cause
that.
once
Like
they
as
found
innocent
out
as it was.
where the source came from
Right.
and where they didn't have to worry about ISIS right there. And,
Right.
But then they were asking me, well, it was a militia training, recruiting picnic, right? And like, yeah, and they're like, well, what'd they talk about? And I told them everything they're talking about, and they talked about doing surveillance on the Somalians and thought they were part of ISIS, and they're like, really? And
Now let's look. I want to cover one thing to define surveillance. So this is not. We're not talking about like drones and things like that. What were they doing to surveil, or were they?
well, at first we'd go over there at night. We'd go to Dodge City.
Mhm.
That's where most of the members were at Dodge City at that time. in the storefront, Dodge City, the storefront, and there's Somalian businesses there,
Mhm.
and you get like two people to a vehicle and go over there about then it got dark, and they stayed open till I think midnight, and they had binoculars, and everybody's armed, everybody's packing and open carrying, and they'd walk in the store. It was kind of strange to me too, because when I went there with them, I was like, they'd go in, they'd carry big white bags out, and
So the militia guys would go
no,
in?
no,
Or
no,
just
other
Somalians?
Somalians.
Okay.
And I was like, they were like, yeah, that's full of cash, or that's full of drugs, and they're selling it to uh, there's a Somalian drug called khat.
Mhm.
It's kind of like I don't know if you've heard of it. It's kind
No.
of like our cocaine, but you chew on it and stuff.
Okay.
They're like, that's khat, or that's cash, and we follow, and they had to have people go out and follow them. I'm like, man, what are you gonna do when you catch them?
Right.
You gonna shoot them? You gonna rob them? You gonna call the cops? And I was asking questions, and nobody had any answers.
Right. Nobody had a plan.
Yeah,
They hadn't thought it
they
out.
had even night vision,
Really?
and so I mean, they were serious. They weren't just doing. Um,
They weren't sitting in cars watching
Right.
people walk by.
Right.
They were.
and they'd follow them, and everybody was armed because they said they're all armed, and they're coming from a war-torn country. They're probably armed, and they'll fight. These guys don't mess with them. They're probably
Right. Right.
they're part of a terrorist group. You don't
Yeah.
want to.
And these are people who have seen some things.
Yeah, I mean they have.
and like they had said in the documentary that when they talk about what you do out at Tyson
Mhm.
meatpacking plant is nothing to what these people have seen in their lives in Somalia,
Right, correct.
in war-torn Somalia.
Yeah, I
Things
mean
like
their
that.
families
So,
are getting blown up by car bombs.
Yeah.
and,
yeah. So
I mean, yeah, that's why they left.
yeah. So anything that they see out there or what we do, I mean, this is
Yeah.
pretty peaceful.
And they,
For them, so-
somehow they didn't. The Somalians never really noticed this.
Yeah.
But that was.
But
kind of
that's what they were
surveillance.
doing. Okay,
Yeah.
so you're in the office with the FBI.
Yeah, and they're asking me all kinds of questions, my background, and stuff, and then they're like, "Would you want to come back the next day to talk to me? We got to do some stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, I guess."
They were not giving you any indication.
No, basically what they were doing, running background checks and talking. It didn't work back,
They were probably seeing where you stood.
Yeah, if I had a criminal record, or most people who work as a source with the FBI or have
And like
criminals working on.
like we're saying, is that when you're talking about informants, mob informants or anything, you're talking about people who are actually in the mob looking to
Right.
get out.
You're right.
And they're asking
they're
you.
cutting their blood. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we're going to get to what they're going to be asking of you. But
Right.
this is, Henry Hill was in the mob and wanted to get out.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and they're asking the complete opposite of you.
Right. Well, and a lot of them, lower the charges,
Yeah.
on them, but not all.
Yeah.
Not all of them. But to have a paid informant was pretty. Even in court, it was kind of shaky.
Right.
Because it just didn't look good.
Right.
And but anyway, I went back the next day and talked to him. We talked more about
Are they telling you not to talk to anybody?
No, they didn't
They
really
just-
say anything. They hadn't asked me anything at that point. And I mean, I told my family what they were doing, or that because the FBI. I mean,
Yeah.
they were curious what the FBI was want to talk to me about.
Right.
But the next day, I went back and they asked me, "Well, are you going to join the militia?" And I was like, "Hey, heck no, I ain't going to join those idiots." I mean, they carry guns. I was listening to some of their conspiracy theories, and they're freaking idiots.
Right.
I'm like, I ain't running around. If I was gonna, I'd start my own militia.
Right.
I know people who actually know how to shoot, and I, I could recruit my own. And anyway, they came out and Amy asked me, well, would you do this for us? Would you started out pretty light, like,
Mhm.
would you do this for us? Would you just mind joining them and just follow them around and just kind of, if you see anything suspicious, just report back to me and report back and just, be the eyes and ears and, because there was a rise in militias at that time and
Right.
ISIS,
Yeah.
and they were actually afraid they'd kidnapping Somalians, and they weren't too worried about the Somali. They had investigated Somalia,
Sure.
to see that they weren't part of the ISIS or doing anything illegal, federal law. So I was like, yeah, why not?
Okay.
That's
Well,
it.
you know what? Let's go ahead and take a little break right
Okay.
there. Are we at about at the 45-minute period? We'll go ahead and take a little break there and then we'll take on from when you went into
Okay.
the militia from there. So we'll take a little break and we'll be back in just a second.